Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our second recorded session for the Principles of Management class for Benazir Bhutto Shahid University. We were last time covering these characteristics of well-designed goals. This is chapter 8 of the text that has been given to you. So just to reconnect from there very quickly, we had looked at these 5 characteristics of well-designed goals. There's also an acronym. If you have remember it from my previous lecture or may have heard about it before, it's called SMART goals. SMART. So SMART goals are specific, measurable, they're actionable or achievable, they're realistic or relevant, actionable, achievable. Different authors define those letters differently. And last but not least, time bound. So you see some of those smart framework suggestions for designing good goals also here. Write out your goals in terms of what you want done. Don't mix it with how you want it done. That's an important but secondary later stage of planning. Measurable, I've spoken of this before. If your goal can't be measured, how can you control it? You will not be able to achieve it. Time frame must be clear. If you leave it open ended, it'll just say, uh, let's say you say, well, I want to do this XYZ. Okay, fine. When do you want to do it? Unless we have a time deadline, we have allocated a time and how when we're going to achieve it, most likely things are not going to get done. Challenging yet attainable, I've given you research about that, how successful people set challenging but attainable goals. They do not set too easily attainable goals that are not challenging, and they don't set such challenging goals that they will fail. Successful people, successful managers, successful entrepreneurs, they like achievable challenges. And last but not least, goals are written down. And I've given you the Harvard Business Study example last time. Now there's a 6 point here which moves it into the organizational setting, that a goal needs to be communicated to everyone. So it's been written down, but it needs to be shared with uh, not literally everybody, but people who need to know, people who are concerned. So not every detail of the company's operations are of use to every single person in the company, but those who do need that information, who will take decisions based on that information, then they uh, should be communicated the goals in a proper manner. And the phrase on the same page, like let's say you're in school and the teacher tells you, please turn to page number 47, then everybody turns to that page, so they're all reading the same text. So that's just an analogical way of saying that by communicating your goals, everybody knows what needs to be done, and at a later stage, obviously, how it needs to be done. Then we have types of plans. There are strategic plans, and then there are operational plans. Some authors also include a third level of plans, which is between strategic and operational. They call them tactical plans. But our text goes for just 2 levels, which is strategic and operational. So, how are these two types of plans different? Their levels are different. You can think of strategic plans being made at the top level and operational plans being made at the middle and first line level, or you might even say lower level, although that term is usually avoided. So, strategic plans, they first of all apply to the whole organization or impact a large part of the organization. Contrast this with operational plans. Operational plans don't apply to the entire organization. So, as an example, let's say a company makes a business plan or a business plan about what kind of profit they want to earn, when they want to earn it, what type of industries they want to stay in, what type of businesses are worth fighting for, which businesses to get out of. So all those things apply to the entire organization or affect the entire organization. If you're launching a new product, then the factory production department will be involved, purchase department will be involved, supply chain, marketing, and the salespeople will be involved. But let's say you're in the factory, I'm talking about an operational plan now, and you want to replace one machinery which is not functioning properly. So that change of one machinery doesn't have a huge impact on the entire organization, assuming you have other machineries which are also producing. So let's say you have 20 machines and one of them gets broken, you replace that. And that would, when do you replace it? Do you get it repaired? Or you change the shift of one person with another person? So those plans affect your department, but they don't have a huge impact on the entire organization. Second aspect of strategic plans is that they establish the organization's overall goals. Again, because they are overall big goals, they affect the entire organization. And this is what is important, this third point, in terms of formulating the how part of the plan. We've already looked at the what to do. The how to do part, if you recall, we've talked about in class and in the recorded session also, probably about SWOT analysis. Now, if you remember our discussion on SWOT analysis, the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats exist in the external environment. And once you've done a good SWOT analysis, then you can match your opportunities and threats in the environment with the strengths and weaknesses that the company has. And by doing that, you're positioning the company in terms of the environment or trying to find a match or a fit between your strengths and weaknesses and the environmental opportunities and threats. And generally speaking, a strategic plan is long term. And again, long term, I've mentioned before, can be 3 years, 7 years. And the bigger the entity, the organization, if it's you're talking about a superpower, you could be planning for next 50 years. But typically, companies plan for, when they say long term, they means 5 years, 10 years. Our also, text also discusses a little about this. Some authors say that anything more than 3 years is long term. The reason being that 3 years doesn't sound such a like a long time, but the environment is changing so rapidly that accurately predicting what's going to go on after 3 years is very, very difficult. Think of how the world has changed in the last 6 months, 6, 7 months because of the coronavirus pandemic. Could anybody have predicted this? Even though we had two similar corona family related diseases, the SARS, the South Asian Respiratory Syndrome, and the MERS, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. But this COVID 19, which is a new form of the coronavirus, nobody could have predicted that so quickly the whole world would be affected. People's company supply chains would be affected, social norms would be affected, laws would have to be passed to ensure the SOPs were being followed, and so on and so forth. Some authors say that a strategic plan can be even for a very short duration, uh, but not everybody agrees with that. Operational plans, they specify the details. Now, here we're talking about exactly how things are going to be done. So, the factory shift example I was mentioning, which machine in which shift, let's say there are three shifts of 8 hours each, and which employee, which factory worker will work for how long, how many units will be produced, when will the machine be stopped for repair and maintenance, how will the handing over of the machine from one employee when their shift ends to the next employee be done, and so on and so forth. So everything that is needed to be done in order to achieve the goal, the details, those are specified in operational plans. And usually, in contrast to strategic plans, operational plans are for a shorter duration. So the production plan, for instance, could be overall for the year, and but then it's also subdivided into quarterly and monthly and weekly and daily, and even how much production will be done on every per machine per shift. Everything is specified. And once again, folks, any questions that you might have, I still have not received any questions from the previous recorded session. If you have any questions, queries, please do share them on the our class WhatsApp group. Here's another way of looking at plans. There are long-term plans such as strategic plans, which I just mentioned. According to our author, anything beyond 3 years is long-term. Short-term plans, 1 year or less. Now, I mentioned that there is a third level called tactical plans, which comes between strategic and tactical operational plans. You might wonder if you look at uh, these time durations here. So anything greater than 3 years is long term. Anything less than 1 year or less is short term. Then what about something which is bigger, longer than 1 year, but less than 3 years? That's where tactical plans fit in, which are, for whatever reason, our author has decided not to include these in the text, but you should be aware of this. So long-term plans, 3 years or more, short-term plans, 1 year or less, and you can add tactical plans being from uh, anything less than 3 years, but more than a year. So 1 year, 2 year, 3 year planning could fit into the tactical level of plan. You could have specific plans and you can have directional plans. Now, let's look at directional plans first. Directional plans tell you where to go. They provide the general direction, but allows you some leeway or discretion or choice in how the implementation part, how you want to get it done. In contrast, specific plans tell you very, very clearly what needs to be done, exactly how it's supposed to be done, and does not give you any leeway or room for using your own judgment or opinion. Let's say, as a common sense example, you are told by somebody to go to a certain place to, let's say, get something. So that would be a directional plan. It tells you what needs to be done, whom to pick up the material from, and that's it. Now, if you want to make a specific plan out of it, you tell the person that, listen, you need to leave at 1:30 p.m. You will use a Kareem service with such and such voucher. You will arrive at that destination at this time. If you arrive early, please wait. And then exactly at such and such time, let's say at 2:15 p.m., you will call up this person and tell them that you're there to receive the particular good. And then you will make sure that you sign a receipt for getting the good, and then you will be back here by 3:15 p.m. So that doesn't leave you much room for choice. Contrast that with somebody had just told you get something from Mr. So and so, then leaving the time and the methodology of getting that good up to you. So both levels of plans are needed. Directional plans are needed and specific plans are also needed. Again, please keep in mind plans have multiple purposes, one of which is that they will serve as a way to control and check for the control function. So it's very important. Okay, here's another way of looking at plans. There are things called single use plans. So you make them, but they are not meant to be used. Again, the reason being that the next time around, the situation may have changed or must have changed. So let's say there's a fire in the factory. Now, that is not a regularly occurring situation. So, when you discover the causes of the fire, you let's say find out that it was due to a short circuit or electrical sparking, then you will make sure that the wiring work for next time around is done very, very thoroughly. There are fire retardants. People are trained to watch out. There are smoke detectors. So you'll take all types of precautions in order to make sure that a fire does not occur because of a short circuit. So all that is well and good, and hopefully next time there will be no fire because of a short circuit. Now imagine that the next time the fire is not because of a short circuit, but because of a deliberate sabotage or somebody who sets fire to company premises either for mischief or for revenge or for some purpose. Now, your previous plan of ensuring safety due to electrical short circuiting is not going to be applicable because the situation is now different. So if somebody has maliciously, with ill intent, set fire to some part of the factory, then you must explore and make another plan about the reasons for why, let's say, an employee did this, somebody was fired, and then they came back to sort of take revenge on the company by setting some part of the factory on fire. So you'll have to look at your HR policies. You'll have to see, okay, how do we terminate employees? Can we provide them some help in finding another job so that they don't have the anger and resentment towards the company? So single-use plans are generally meant to be used once, and after a time, the situation has changed. So you can reuse that plan, but you might have to modify quite a bit of it. In contrast to single-use plans, we have standing plans. Standing plans, as this word should clue to you, they are there regularly. So they provide continuous guidance about how things are to be done. And usually these standing plans are for situations which are not going to change as rapidly as in the use for single-use plan. So we have, if you look at our text, it's not mentioned here, that rules, policies, and procedures. There are three categories: rules, policies, and procedures. They are standing plans. They don't change. So let's say you're supposed to be you're supposed to have 75 or 80% attendance. Let's say it's 75% attendance in university. Now, if that is made a rule, then you know that's not going to change for semester to semester. In fact, some rules don't change for a very, very long time. Let's say there's a rule that you have to stop at a red light at an intersection. Now, the next week when you go, they say, no, 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 we reversed the rules and now you're going to stop at a green light. But that doesn't make sense because the traffic and the road and the conditions of driving, they don't change from week to week or day to day. So you have one rule that this is how it's going to be done, and you continue with that. In contrast to a rule, a policy is a little bit more flexible. So let's say instead of having a rule of 75% attendance, we have a policy for 75% attendance. Now, in policy, there's a bit of a flexibility. So let's say a student has 73% attendance, they're short by 2%. Now, because it's a policy and not a rule, the administration or the person who holds the authority can, uh, using some flexibility in the policy, say that, okay, we are condoning attendance up to 5% for this semester, and students who are from 70 to 74%, they can also sit in the exam. So that would be an example of policy. Procedures, let's say we have an admissions procedure, taking a university example again. So you came here to the university, you used you filled out some forms, or maybe you did it electronically. Then you sat for some entrance test. If there was an entrance test, you may have come for an interview. Then you were sent a selection letter. Then you paid the fees. Then you enrolled in courses or programs and so on and so forth. So there's a step-by-step way of doing something. So such step-by-step ways of doing something are procedural plans. Now, when you're formulating goals and the plans to achieve those goals, One way of doing that is the traditional way. You can say the way that has been common throughout human history since organizations have been established. Perhaps the first public limited company was the East India Company, which was also used for by the British to expand to help out in colonization. But excuse me, since the time that organizations were set up in traditional goal setting, the big boss, the CEO, the president, the chairperson of the board, whoever has the executive power, they set the or the board of directors jointly they set the top level broad goals of the organization. So keep in mind you're not taking any input from middle or lower level. I'll tell you an interesting example after this slide or two about how this kind of traditional goal setting and planning sometimes fails, and what one very famous company did to change the traditional way of goal setting and planning. Secondly, goals are then broken into smaller goals or sub goals for each organizational level. So you will recall from our classes on campus that there's the top level, mid level, and the first line level of managers, and then there are the non-managerial employees. So at each level, you are breaking down these general broad goals into more specific organizational goals. Let's say the vice presidents have decided, by VP of marketing, VP of finance, VP of production, they've all decided on certain goals, but then those goals are broken down to, let's say, the marketing department has 5 brands, the production department has 3 factories working under it, the salespeople has 5 territories. So for each department and its function at various levels, those goals, let's say the topmost goal, if you'll recall, is nothing but profitability for a business organization. So which brand will earn what profit, which areas will operate, and so on and so forth. These are all also decided. A big assumption in traditional goal setting is that we at the top, those who are leading the company, the founders, owners, professional managers, the CEO, chairperson, president, board of directors, we have enough experience. We know what's going on. We are aware of the overall picture. We know best. Now, this is an assumption. In times of changing technology, sometimes the older people are out of touch with latest technology and they don't know what's best. Or sometimes they are too fixed in their ways and they don't want to change, whereas the environment is forcing change. So, this is only an assumption that top management knows best. They don't necessarily know best. In traditional goal setting, the goals that have been set from the top, the purpose is to direct, guide, and also limit or constrain you from the top. This assumes also that workers, if left to their own devices, if they're left to manage their own self, they will make a disaster of it. They will not control themselves. They will just lounge around and not do any work. Um in some of the chapters of this text, there are motivational theories which we haven't explicitly covered. There are two famous theories called Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X assumes that workers are inherently lazy. They don't want to work. They have to be pushed from above. So traditional goal setting also works under this assumption that you need to guide people, limit them, tell them what to do from the top. Otherwise, they're not going to do it. One drawback of traditional goal setting is that, as we'll see in another slide, that when the goals are being translated from top to mid level to first line level and down to non-managerial employees level, these goals tend to be misinterpreted or wrongly interpreted, as we'll see in the next slide. Because to the please imagine, because no feedback has been taken from the employees, they are just told directives about what to do and how to do it. They will only interpret it according to their own understanding. This is an example of how the last point we just covered, that how traditional goal setting might lead to misinterpretation and confusion. So at the topmost level, let's say the top management, the board of directors decide that we need to improve the company's performance. Now, performance is a big word. It includes profits, but it includes other things as well, such as maintaining uh, quality standards, keeping customers satisfied, complying with government rules and regulations, keeping our shareholders happy, etc., and other stakeholders. Now, when top management has issued this goal, the division, let's say there are two or three, four, five divisions of a company, the divisional head person interprets or understands this top level goal to mean that, okay, the top people want increase in profits, big increase in profits. Okay. So please keep in mind, top management unfortunately did not specify what performance or what type of performance needed to be improved. The divisional people interpreted as merely profits and a significant improvement. Now, this leaves it again open that what is significant improvement. Then, once this directive or goal is sent to the department level, now we're talking about production, accounting, finance, sales, marketing, HR, etc., etc. The Let's say we're talking about the marketing department, they interpret this directive that we have to increase profits regardless of the means. So please keep in mind, regardless of the means was not the directive or intention of either the division management level or the top management level. But this is how it has been misinterpreted. And when you come to the non managerial level, the individual employee level, this assumes that they're doing some production work. They interpret increase of profit means increase in the number of units produced. Don't worry about quality, just work fast. Now, if this way of thinking were known to the top management level, they would be shocked that we never said that we wanted an increase just in quantity at the expense of quality. But in traditional goal setting, because you're sending directives and orders from top to bottom, the top down approach, there is a big chance of miscommunication and misinterpretation. And now imagine if workers start producing more without caring for quality, what's going to happen? The customers will get the product, they will discover quality problems with it, there will be customer complaints, customers will leave the company, they will badmouth the company to other potential customers, and then sales will decline. And right up to the top, management will say, hey, what's going on? So by that time, sometimes it's too late. So traditional goal setting has its advantages. It's speedy, it's clear cut, but it has also these disadvantages. In contrast to traditional goal setting, there is something called management by objectives. This was introduced by a management thinker by the name of Peter Drucker. He died, I think, about 10 years back, I think, at the ripe old age of 98. And he introduced this concept, if I'm not mistaken, in the 1950s. And this is in contrast with the traditional top down goal setting. Not completely opposite it, but different from it. So, in management by objectives, in contrast to traditional goal setting, please keep in mind these goals are jointly determined by employees and managers. Whereas in traditional goal setting was done at one level, then passed on or divided into smaller goals at another level. Here, the goal setting is also jointly being done. So you're taking input, which wasn't the case in traditional goal setting. What is new in MBO is that they've made reviewing of the accomplishment of the goal with frequent intervals periodically a part of the planning process. So, as General Eisenhower and later President of US Eisenhower said, plans are nothing, planning is everything, which means environment will change and you constantly need to adjust. So over the interval you can fix, you can monitor on a hourly basis, a daily basis, weekly basis, fortnightly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis, half yearly basis. You can measure at the end of the year. But the more periodic reviews there are, that are you achieving your goals? Are you moving toward them? It always helps to accomplish those goals instead of just waiting for the time period to end and then saying, "Oh, so what went wrong?" So the more frequent the checks, the better chances are for achieving your goal. And here's, you might say this is very obvious, but Drucker made this explicit that depending on how well you're doing, you will be given rewards. And obviously, what's not stated here, if you don't achieve these goals, then these rewards will be withheld from you. In fact, there might be punishment as well. Key elements: goals are very specific, decision making is participatory, explicit, meaning clear cut, defined performance evaluation period is mentioned, and there is feedback from the employees and from the boss, depending on how the work is progressing. Also, keep in mind that just words are not enough. Let's say we have in government sector something called the ACR, in Pakistan, the Annual Confidential Review. Now, the purpose on paper is clear that the ACR is supposed to evaluate your performance and give you an increment or reward or chances of progress in your pay scale according to your performance. But it is well known that ACRs are used more as a weapon to uh, take revenge or try to reward one's friends or cronies in the organization, regardless of whether the organization is achieving its goals or not. So, if you are not keeping the boss happy despite doing the work that the organization demands of you, if you're not doing things the way boss wants it, right or wrong, then he or she is going to make sure that your ACR or annual confidential review is disastrous. So in that, what we call niyat, or what we call in English intention, it's all a matter of intention. If you have good intentions in doing all this, let's talk about feedback. I've known bosses who would call a meeting and ask people, the team members, well, okay, we're going to go do this, and what's your view? And what's your view? Let's say there are three people in the meeting aside from the boss, and everybody says well, what they think should be done or how it should be done. But the boss doesn't really want feedback. They just want to give the impression of getting feedback. You might encounter this sometime with, let's say, parental figures when you're younger. Mother, father figure might ask, okay, what do you want? And then you say what you want, and then they say, no, you're not going to get this. So, similarly, I've seen with some bosses that once you've given your so-called feedback, which the and you're thinking that okay, the boss wants to hear my opinion, then the boss pulls out an already printed piece of paper in which he or she has already decided what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. So in such a case, again, the intention of asking people for their opinion was flawed. It was not genuine. It was just meant to give an impression of getting feedback. But the boss really didn't want any genuine feedback. Very quickly, this is again, uh, please ignore this heading. In our text, this is in the 8th chapter. So, steps in a typical MBO program, management by objectives program. Some we've already looked at, a very quick look. The company's top level objectives and strategies are set. Then the divisional and department level objectives are divided. And then at this level, so in steps number 1 and 2, this is similar to traditional goal setting. It's here that MBO becomes really comes into its power, that at the units level, the strategic business unit level, then the goal setting about how the top level goals are to be done by our particular unit or department. This is done collaboratively with the unit managers. Then specific objectives are collaboratively set with all departments. So please keep in mind a strategic business unit, let's say um, a company is making tea, so that's one strategic business unit. Within that business unit, obviously, there will be the factory which will get the tea, unpack it from the crates if it's been imported or shipped to them, and then it will pack it into smaller boxes for retail level use. And then there will be the sales people, there will be the finance people, and so on and so forth. Fifth, action plans are made. This is again clearly defined in MBO that how the objectives are to be achieved. And these objectives are also how the objectives are to be achieved are made specific and agreed upon by managers and employees, different from traditional goal setting. The action plans are implemented and then progress is periodically reviewed so that feedback is provided to take corrective action. We'll be encountering this term feedback in the control chapter as well, and then successful achievement of objectives is reinforced by performance based rewards so that people are motivated to keep on working. Now you if you think of what kind of I'd like to hear if there are any discussions, those of you who are listening to this recording, that in terms of, let's say, these online classes being held or not being held, or the manner in which they'll be held, uh, what kind of planning do you think went on, the traditional goal setting or the MBO type goal setting? I'd like to hear about that from the group, and this will also tell me whether anybody is actually listening to these recordings or not. Very quickly, the question is, well, MBO seems fine on paper, but does it really work? And research says that uh, yes, it does work as long as top management is genuinely committed to making it work and they're involved in its implementation. As I mentioned in the previous slide, if the intention is wrong, then an MBO program will fail. If the boss doesn't really want participation but just fakes or pretends to get participation, it's not going to go down well. And despite the theoretical strength of MBO and its implementation, there can be several issues. So, when the environment is rapidly changing, then you require constant goal uh, change and resetting of goals. So, MBO won't work in such a situation. And because you're rewarding individuals for their performance in the MBO model, teamwork might be neglected. So, one contrary example of this was uh, somebody who was working, this is a real life case for a real life company. In their company, the sales team of the pharmaceutical company, they had given a reward system based on team performance. So let's say there's a team of 4 people selling one particular drug in one particular region, a pharmaceutical drug, and 3 salespeople have achieved their quotas. But let's say the fourth new salesperson has not been able to achieve his or her quota or target set for them. Now, because the rewards are going to be team based, it is in the interest of the 3 experienced and successful salespeople to help out their fourth colleague, because they know that the rewards given to them will be based on the team meeting its target. If there were no team-based rewards, then you would find that the 3 top performers wouldn't care about the fourth salesperson meeting or not meeting his or her quota. So in MBO, there's an emphasis on or overemphasis on individual achievement, then teamwork gets to suffer. This is again intention if you're just implementing the MBA program because you heard it's good and you don't really want to have participation and feedback and periodic reviews and performance based rewards, and you're just doing some paperwork, bureaucratic shuffling, then MBO is not going to work for you. Okay. There are several steps in the goal setting process. First of all, you set the mission statement. I have mentioned before, if you read management text, different authors define mission and vision differently. In some texts, I've seen vision is defined like a mission, and a mission is defined like a vision. Some authors say that there is actually no difference between a mission and vision statement. Some authors say a mission comes first, then a vision comes, and then some authors say exactly the opposite, that no, the sequence has changed. So, for our purposes, we will, although I'll just show you an example of how mission and vision can be distinguished by some companies, but there's no universal academic agreement on differences between mission and vision statements. Um, okay, we can discuss this on the WhatsApp group if you have any confusion. So, your mission, your top level mission statement should influence the goals. Let's say your top level mission statement is to care for or reduce illnesses wherever you might find it. Let's say a pharmaceutical company. But let's say your goal is that we'd like to achieve X amount of profit and sell our particular cure, even if it has very serious side effects. Let's hide that part from the health authorities and get our drug released into the market. Would such a goal reflect the mission statement? No, it would not. So, ideally, if you made a top level mission statement, that should guide every goal that you're setting. You can check the goals that you set with the mission statement, because the mission statement is a long term, uh, very broad statement which should guide you in everything that you're doing. Once we take a look at certain mission statements, I hope you'll be able to better understand that. Then you evaluate whether you have the resources in order to accomplish this mission. If you don't have the resources, no problem. You can try to acquire them. If you have them, then you can try to use them. So, just having a resource is not sufficient. You should have the skills and capabilities and competence to use those resources. Third question is, are you going to determine the goals individually or collectively? And are those goals smart goals? Are they specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound or not? Write down the goals. We've covered this before. And then, last but not least, the control function kicks in here. Review the results and find out whether the goals are being made. And if they're not being met, those goals, then obviously you uh, need to change those goals or change the way of achieving those goals. We just have this one slide to look at. We're out of time for this session. So this is from a well-known company which you are well familiar with. Most probably, uh, this product has been used in your household for cooking purposes. National Foods, which makes various recipes and mixes their masalas. So this is directly from their um, website. This screenshot is from their website, and this is just the text of that for your easier readability. They want to be, this is their mission statement. They want, actually, this is their vision statement. They want to be a 50 billion rupee company, which means that they have a financial goal stated right into the mission statement. Um, in which sector? The convenience food segment, by launching products and services in the domestic and international market. So you can imagine that they have objective or top level in order to be present in international markets as well. And what will these convenience food products do? They will enhance the lifestyle and create value for our customers at all levels. Customers through management excellence at all levels. So this is I found this statement of National Foods to be a fairly well written statement, mission statement. In contrast to the next one, I'll show you, which is also from Pakistan. Um, a good mission statement covers three aspects. It tells you what business you're in, it tells you who your target market is, the kind of segment you're serving, and it also should tell you how you're better than competitors. So if those three things are there, that's considered a good mission statement. So we find a reflection of that element uh, in this mission statement. Excuse me. Now, in contrast to the National Foods mission statement, is this park fans, another product which might be installed in your house. They make ceiling fans and exhaust fans and all manner of fans, pedestal fans, bracket fans, and so on and so forth. This is from their website. Now, what I find problematic about this vision and mission statement, if you look at it, is that it lacks the very elements I mentioned uh, about what your business in, who your target market or segment is, and how you're better than others. So very quick read of this before we end. There, let's just look at their mission statement, and then we can discuss the park vision statement later on. Our mission is to fulfill the needs and expectations. What needs and expectations? Contrast this with national food statement that they specified that they are in the food segment. Park Fans does not specify what needs and expectations by delivering reliable, world class yet affordable products. Very vague, world class, very ambitious. What is reliability? Products consistently to our customers. So it's vague. It doesn't say much, and it is. um not really a helpful mission statement. So, folks, this ends the today's second recorded session, our second recorded session for our online classes, and we'll finish off chapter 8, and inshallah move on then to the chapter on organizing, uh, which is probably at the end of this week, Friday. Friday, I think it is. Thank you very much, and inshallah hope to hear from you and get feedback from you.